Welcome to Family Education Weekend pre-event podcast. It is great to see you. Thanks so much for joining me here. I wanted to jump in for just a few minutes and tell you a little bit about our event that we have coming up. That's going to be an online event. It's going to be so much fun. We're going to be gathering together in Zoom calls and doing some raffles and giveaways. It's going to be a lot of fun to talk about living with hemophilia and specifically to address the family dynamics. Hemophilia doesn't affect just one person. Bleeding disorder doesn't affect just one person. It affects the whole family unit. And so I think that it's really important for us to have a conversation about all the different elements of that support system, where it's your parenting, or maybe it's talking about you as a child becoming an adult. That's a big stepping stone. We want to talk a little bit about unaffected siblings. We want to talk about all kinds of angles of the support system that we all think of as family. And to do that today, I've invited a good friend of mine, Andy Matthews, to join me to have a conversation to talk a little bit more about what family, how important family is. And Andy, it is great to see you today. Thanks so much for joining me for Family Education Weekend.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Jonathan.
Well, I know a lot of people have known you through the years. You've been around for a long time. You yourself are affected by hemophilia. And of course, you have an amazing story about your family and growing up with hemophilia. But I wanted to get just for those people who might be tuning in and haven't met you before, this is a great opportunity for people to get to know you a little bit better. And so I thought it'd be good for you to just tell us a little bit about where you're from, what your role is in the community, and how you're impacted by hemophilia.
Absolutely. Yeah, I live in Waco, Texas. Not from Waco. I grew up in South Texas, went to school and married in Dallas area for 25 years, and we moved down here a couple years ago. I work for Specialty Therapeutic Care, Care Health, same company. Great specialty pharmacy. We're located our pharmacy's in Houston. We're a national company, but our pharmacy's right there in Houston. And so, we like to give custom specialized service. And one of my roles is the hemophilia specialist. I help a lot with insurance and finding ways to navigate that and other things. So if I can be any help at all, let me know. I've been doing this for over 30 years and I have a great passion about hemophilia.
30 years is a long time for anybody in any career, but especially when you've been living with a bleeding disorder, that's a long time as well. And tell us a little bit about that. I mean, you grew up in Corpus Christi, and your whole journey of living with hemophilia looked a whole lot different than it does today, but your family actually played a pretty critical role in getting treatment early on. And if I'm not mistaken, I think part of your story is that you were actually very early in the process of getting your treatment at home. Not very many people were doing that at all at the time. But tell me a little bit about how your family and your support system played a huge role in you getting the treatment you needed back then.
No, it's just because I have great range of motion in my arms and in most of my joints, other than my ankle, that I got home therapy in the home from a product that most people don't even know what it is. It's called cryoprecipitate, and that's a tough tongue twister. But yeah, me and you, Jonathan, have very similar stories, and our parents were much of our biggest advocates. But definitely, when I grew up. I was diagnosed at 6 months old, and we lived in Corpus Christi, but we were from San Antonio for a little while. So I don't know how, but my dad got me hooked up, or mom, with what is now kind of the South Texas Hemophilia Treatment Center in San Antonio. Back then, it wasn't that organized, I don't think, but there was a doctor that diagnosed that knew a decent amount about hemophilia, and he told my parents I had hemophilia after they noticed all these bruises and blah, blah, blah. And they, freaked out. But after they, grasped it all, they came to my realization, my dad did. He was always in sports, that if we can, get this boy strong and healthy, I think he's going to have a lot better chance of it. And then we moved to Corpus and we met this Dr. Sharp. And he was at the time just a regular, what we call a hemoc in the hemophilia world, which typical hemocs don't know much about hemophilia, only because they don't see many hemophilia patients, because most of those are all routed, not all, but most are routed through what we call as hemophilia treatment center. But we didn't have one, and we were down there, and it's still 3 hours away. And I don't know how he had this huge idea. But back then it was huge. If we could give cryoprecipitate, it was much like plasma, had to be 0 degrees, in a deep freezer and so forth. If we could give that in the home setting versus in the emergency room setting, Andy would be much better off. And I'm not sure, it wasn't right away, maybe a year or two into my life, after going to the ER over time. And you can imagine infusing a 6 month or an 8 month old of cryoprecipitate, which was very large volumes, like 250 cc syringes, hitting a vein and having it last that long. It's a nightmare. It's not anything any parent wants to ever go through. And so they didn't have portacasts. That would have been wonderful too. But they did say that if you could teach your mom how to hit a vein, she could probably do this. And it was, I don't know, I was 2 or 3 years old before they started, maybe 4 years old before they started doing it in the home. But yeah, it changed our lives. Gave us freedom. As I was 5 or 6 years old, we could travel. Other than it was a pretty funny story. Every time we traveled, we would go visit one of my favorite places, which is called Baskin Robbins, for ice cream, because they were the only people that also had dry ice. So we'd have to go to Baskin Robbins to get the dry ice. Probably had some ice cream too. I don't remember that. And then we would take that dry ice, put it over the cryoprecipitate. Then we would have to make sure wherever we were going had a deep freezer, not just a regular freezer, a deep freezer. And that's not easy. Hotel, whatever, had to have a deep freezer to put it in there. And then by that time the dry ice would melt, we'd have to find another Baskin Robbins to take it home. I mean, it was an ordeal just to travel. Anyway, so yeah,
Wow.
it's literally amazing that I ended up with so few joint bleeds. I mean, target joints is mostly really my left ankle, which is pretty bad, but I still get along very, very good. But my other joints, it's amazing how I don't have more joint damage than I do.
Wow. And you have any idea about what year that was that you started that? You said you're 2 or 3
We
years old.
probably started that in the early 70s.
70s. Wow.
And my mom went to work for the civil service to get insurance. And that
Wow.
was the only, because my dad, he was a CPA and small business. He couldn't get insurance and so forth. So the Naval Air Station called CCAD out in Corpus Christi actually had what you call a blood drive. And the VT-31 was the hangar that took me on as a project. And there were a bunch of pilots and they donated the blood. So basically it cost 700,000 a year to treat hemophilia today. Your average treatment back then cost me nothing, because which
Wow.
is mind boggling. It wasn't as good and all that, but it went from nothing, from zero to all 18 years to now over $500,000 a year. So
Well, and because it didn't take for a lot of people who haven't had experience with cryoprecipitate, it didn't take nearly as many donors
yeah.
actually to get the cryoprecipitate sample in order to
Mhm.
infuse, correct?
Mhm. Actually, Judith Graham Poole discovered it, and it's very, when you thaw out plasma, uh, something precipitates at the bottom. That's where they get the word precipitate, and that's what is called cryo. And cryo is very rich in factor 8. I'm pretty sure it has factor 9 too, because that's all they had, back in the day.
Yeah. That's amazing. Do you remember how many people it would take to donate blood for you to get one of these?
I
Or do
mean,
you remember?
I don't
2 or
think it was
3
that
people.
much. I mean, I think
Yeah.
every liter of plasma that they got, they would make a. I mean, it couldn't have been that many. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
10, 20, I don't know,
It's
30,
fascinating.
under 30. And they would, the Nueces County Blood Bank. I don't know how my dad talked him into this, but they just said, if you'll donate the blood, that we'll make it free, which is bizarre to me. But they would
Wow.
make it. All I would have to do is go buy the infusion sets, uh, which I bought them there at the blood bank. I mean, it was like $15 or $20 every time I picked up, which is kind of like a copay today.
Yeah.
But that was my whole treatment. It was amazing. So
Wow.
I guess they just wanted to do something good for somebody, and I'm grateful to it today.
I mean, you were easily 10 years ahead of the curve for home infusion because
Yeah.
home infusion did not really seem to grab a lot of
Mhm.
traction in the community until the early 80s. I mean, that would probably
Yeah.
be the earliest. But yeah, that's just amazing but really all kind of because your parents just kept
Mhm.
pushing and asking questions and
Yes.
advocating and seeking that input. And that's one of the big things that we're talking about this weekend is how vital it is to have such a strong support system, and obviously your parents were that for you. And what would you tell parents today that are obviously the landscape looks tremendously different than it did in the 70s, but tell me a little bit about you work with patients day in and day out and day in and day out, and you see some patients that are living fairly stable and very successful lives, if that we would call it. You see other patients that are very unstable and have terrible joints as a result. They have a lot of challenges as a result. Does the family support system play a role in that stability?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the patients that are educated, not college necessarily, just their parents are educated. They make it their mission. I am going to be educated about hemophilia. Okay, you can be educated in anything today in a very short amount of time with the internet. Anything you want to be
Yeah.
educated on fixing toilets in just a short amount of time, you can. Same thing with hemophilia. There's tons of information out there, but a lot of people just don't seek it, and I see a huge disparity between educated and non-educated on their depending on their care and in their outcomes, their joints. A lot of times people, young men, 20, 25 years old, have horrible joints. I don't know, I guess they just don't get it that repeated bleeds in a joint over time is going to just destroy your joints. It's a simple stuff, but a lot of times people just don't get it, whether they're doing prophylaxis or they're doing or they're on the best treatment they could be on, whatever. But yeah, we a lot of our patients, 40% probably of our patients, do not see treatment centers, not because they just, due to their insurance where they live, even though I think that's probably the best place for most patients, but a lot of them can't. So therefore, it's ultimately going to be up to the patient and the family to make sure they're getting the right care as
Yeah,
well
that's
as
a great point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we noticed that actually the last event that we had, over 40% of the patients attending our event did not go to a CDC
Mm-hmm.
recommended treatment center. And I'm like you, in the same way that I think that it's probably the best place for them to be, but sometimes that's not always an option. And I think it's even all the more reason why people have to be empowered. It's one of the reasons why we do events like this, is to have a deeper conversation about the nuances of what it means to be able to get involved and be educated about what your needs are. But I think there's another step to it too, which is clearly what happened with your parents in your situation. Was even when education was still developing and things are just information is just coming out, there is a certain aspect of it of being of pushing, right? You gotta keep asking
Mm-hmm.
questions and not just settle for just what the first answer is that you get, but continuing to ask for questions. And I would say, even for people who might not have a strong support system, maybe your parents aren't there to advocate for you or fight for you like you need, but you should also ask questions. You can say, well, what about this and what about that, and how do I get better treatment? And the ramifications of that obviously present themselves, like you said, in terms of joint damage. It presents themselves in target joints. And I think a lot of people sometimes just relegate their diagnosis to the lowest common denominator, which is, well, I have hemophilia, I'm going to have joint damage. And that simply just isn't
Mm-hmm.
a must. I mean, in today's day and age, you can get therapy. It is accessible in the US. You have the ability to be able to get treatment that you need. You just have to ask the right questions and keep asking the right questions, right?
I mean, yeah, and I liken it to a lot of the things that I've taken on as hobbies in my life that I did not know anything about. And I think about it, maybe it's a subconscious thing that I try to surround myself with people that are dealing with whatever I want to learn, because that's the best way to learn. Same
That's
thing with
good.
hemophilia. You need to surround, doctors are great, and the physicians will tell you this. Get around, meet other people. If you just met three other people, just three, and became, close to them and met two or three industry experts, you'll become an expert before you know it, because you'll just be trading stories. And if you don't know it, then somebody else will know the right person. Jonathan, he'll know the right person to get the answer to your question or whatever. But it's so important to surround yourself with people that are dealing with this hemophilia, von Willebrand's, whatever your situation is. It's hard to do it on your own. There's just too many things that are happening rapidly in this industry.
It's a great point, and truly, I think that a lot of people don't realize that how many things are accessible to them. Like, for instance, today we're having this conversation over Zoom or online, and I think it's really, really powerful that there, like you said earlier, you can learn anything you want to, but you can also build relationships without knowing somebody. I think a lot of times people say, "Oh, well, I don't know anybody in my hometown. There's nobody in my state that
Mm-hmm.
has it." I hear that still all the time. But the kicker is get involved, even if it's online like this, and connect with people. Try to get onto social media or get involved in a meeting that is being provided, because these are good opportunities for you to connect with and learn from other people that maybe you can build a couple relationships that you can ask trusted questions to later on. And but I do think it's important that the responsibility lands on us and our support system. And the truth is that the outcomes are better the stronger that your support system is. If that's not your immediate family, maybe that can be your friends, maybe that can be your extended family that we like to refer to, or maybe it can be your immediate family. Continue building that. Look for people that you can spend time with that will be supportive of what your needs are. And you just got to keep pushing. Sometimes you got to do the right thing long enough to see the results that you need to have the outcomes that you want. And
And
that's not always easy.
with parents, I try to teach my own two boys, uh, as much as I can about hemophilia, just because I want them to understand what their dad goes through. And my oldest son, man, he could carry on a fairly good conversation with somebody like yourself, Jonathan, if I wasn't even in the room, because I talk to him about it a lot. Same thing. Talk to your kids. Don't have your son, 25 years old or 21 years old or even 19, that constantly the parents are having to answer the questions.
Yeah.
If you want to have your kid independent of hemophilia, then you got to start early age. Obviously self-infusing, whatever, but talk to them about all the things. Hey, we're looking at this new therapy. This is why, and get them involved. It's just part of it. It'll be fun for them.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think talking about it with people that you don't know is also valuable too. Like, I have found a lot of times educating people that have no connection, a lot of times has helped me learn how to frame my story a little bit more simply. And so that helps me to be able to get better at advocating. It helps me ask the right questions more often. And so yeah, absolutely. Teach the people that you love around you about it, and also teach the people that maybe you're strangers, because sometimes that really will help you get better at sharing your story and asking and speaking up for the things that you need.
Absolutely. And how you portray it. I was just at a great conversation with somebody at my church. He was a primary care physician. He didn't know much about hemophilia. And the more and more we started talking about it, he was real fascinated. And it's like, who knows? He might, run across hemophilia, someday. But
Yeah.
regardless, he kept, how it came on is he was asking me, why am I limping so much? I can't really, the more I get older and having problems with my ankle, I pretty much have to, it just gets awkward. So I just tell him. But how you tell him, it's no big deal to him, because he can see that nothing slows Andy down. So young men, how you talk to people about your hemophilia will be how they react. So if you're just informative, hey, it's just no big deal, this is what it is, they'll be very interested. It won't be heck, I think for most jobs, unless it's manual labor, I think it'd be a asset to let them know, hey man, I got a kid that's wanting to learn this career and he's whipped hemophilia. This guy, I want to hire this guy. Don't look. So many people want to keep that little hemophilia story in a box, but
Yeah,
you can literally use it for your benefit,
that's
because
true.
most people young men that deal with hemophilia, they're extraordinary young men. They just need to learn how to tell that story to other people.
That's
Uh,
right.
Don't you think?
Well, I absolutely, absolutely, and I think it can start small too, even with things about like you and I have talked about this a lot about like with your pharmacy in particular, being able to sort of knock on that door and say, "Hey, look, I need this kind of syringe, or I need this kind of transfer device, or I need this kind of bandage." Sometimes those little small things, even in the people that you do know day in and day out, are equally as critical as the big conversations, right? So get confident with that. Know what you need to help make your health better and communicate with your support system because the pharmacy plays a huge role in being a part of that support system, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of times people just don't, communicate enough with their pharmacy what they need because everybody's situation is different. There's a lots of different needles and lots of different supplies, and unless you tell somebody, it's not always a given what people are using because there's lots of different ones. We keep tons of different supplies in stock and we mess it up sometimes, and we try to fix it because there's just so many different ones. So people just need to communicate that with whoever they use.
Yeah, speak up.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. Well, I really appreciate so much you do in the community, Andy. You've been out there preaching strong advocacy for a long time. For we talk a lot about advocacy on a political level, but really, I think advocacy goes all the way to you just being able to speak up for yourself to your doctor, to tell your communicate your needs there, advocacy to speak up to your pharmacy, to tell what your needs are there, and really even telling your own story in among your friends, your school, your coworkers, like you said. I think that that's important, and so you have been such an incredible example of what that looks like and how to do that over the years, and I appreciate you. And also, a big thank you to Carrier Health for sponsoring Hope and all the programs that we provide to help encourage people to be able to do more of this. We couldn't do programs like this if it wasn't for your help. And so, thank you so much, Andy, for all that you do
Yeah.
for the community.
Thanks.
Well, great. Well, we'll see you soon. We'll see you at the session. Matter of fact, if you want to hang out with Andy, you can come and ask him some questions at our exhibit hall in the event itself on May 19th, 20th, and 21st. I think it's going to be a fantastic time to be able to hang out. So, Andy, we'll make sure that we see you in there in the exhibit hall.
Awesome.
All right. If you haven't registered yet for this event, it's a great time to jump on the website and register now. You can register at hope-charities.org, and you can also make certain that you send us an email if you have any questions, because you can email us at events@hope-charities.org, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. We're giving tons of raffles away and gift cards away in sessions, so make sure that you check out the website for all the details of that. And the event itself will be held live on Zoom on May 19th, 20th, and 21st. You don't have to come to all the sessions. Just come to one session if you want. Pick out one or two that really make the most sense to you. We're actually uploading content now to show more and more details about what those sessions will be about. But really, we really hope that this will be an opportunity for you and your family to gather together, put it on the TV, get excited, get the kids involved, get some popcorn, and join us for this wonderful session that we're going to have to talk a lot more about the support system and what it means to be able to build your own support system in a stronger way. So thanks so much for joining us today for this podcast. We look forward to seeing you on May 19th, 20th, and 21st. And go get online and register now. We'll see you there soon. Take care.